So, you've definitely seen those viral videos, right? The robot dogs doing backflips, running through obstacle courses. They make it look so easy, almost alive. But have you ever stopped to think about what it really takes to teach one to walk? Especially when the ground underneath it is doing everything it can to throw it off balance? Well, let's pull back the curtain and break down the incredible engineering behind it all. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big question. Why legs in the first place? Then we'll zoom in on this absolutely wild experiment involving a shaky bridge. From there, we'll see how a digital brain gets trained for a challenge like this, how that training actually translates to the real world, and finally, what it all means for the future of robotics.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics. Why even bother putting legs on a robot? Why not just stick with wheels?
Well, the whole idea comes straight from nature. It's a concept called biomimicry. I mean, think about it. For millions of years, animals have mastered getting around on every kind of surface you can imagine. So these quadruped robots, like the famous Spot you see here, are designed to copy that amazing adaptability, especially in places where our usual solutions, like wheels, just completely fail. And that really gets to the heart of a huge trade-off in robotics. Look, wheeled robots are fantastic on smooth surfaces, like roads or floors. They're super efficient, they're simple, but they need the ground to be continuous. One big rock, one flight of stairs, and they're done. Legged robots, on the other hand, are built for the messy, unstructured real world. They can step over rubble, carefully pick and choose where to place their feet, and basically go places that wheels could only dream of.
So that brings us to the main event. Researchers wanted to push this whole idea of adaptability to its absolute limit with a very, very specific challenge.
You know, it's one thing to walk on ground that's uneven and rocky, but what happens when the ground itself is physically moving up and down beneath you? This problem, which scientists call vertical ground perturbation, is actually pretty common in places like disaster zones or on industrial machinery, but it's almost never been studied in robotics. So, how does a robot possibly deal with that? To find out, researchers at TU Darmstadt built this. This is the Humvee Bridge. It's over 13 meters long, made of steel and concrete, weighs 12,000 kilograms, and it's engineered specifically to shake up and down at 2 hertz. This isn't just a tough obstacle. It's a precision scientific instrument designed to test the absolute limits of a robot's balance.
And here's where it gets really brilliant. Before the real robot ever touched that bridge, it was trained entirely inside a computer. The researchers created what's called a digital twin, a perfectly accurate simulation of the bridge right down to its weight, its length, and exactly how it shakes. This is the virtual playground where all the learning happens.
So, how in the world did they actually do it? Let's dive into the robot's brain and see how it learns to walk from scratch inside that simulation.
The secret sauce is a technique called reinforcement learning. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like teaching a dog a new trick. You don't give it a bunch of complex instructions, right? You just give it a treat when it does something right. The AI learns the exact same way. It tries something, and if that action helps it move forward without falling over, boom, it gets a little reward point. After doing this millions and millions of times, it starts to figure out the best possible strategy to get the most rewards.
And a huge part of that strategy is the robot's gait. That's just a fancy word for the specific pattern of how its 4 legs move.
Just like a horse can walk, or trot, or gallop, a robot can be taught all these different gaits. A trot, for example, moves diagonal legs at the same time. A pace moves the 2 legs on the same side together. A bound moves the front 2 and back 2 as pairs. Each one has its own rhythm, its own trade-offs between speed and stability.
But here's the thing. The AI starts out as a blank slate. It's just flailing its virtual legs around like a newborn giraffe. So how do you guide it towards something that actually looks like a coordinated walk?
Well, this is where a really clever method called reward shaping comes into play. Instead of only rewarding the robot for the big final goal, like crossing the bridge, you give it little intermediate rewards along the way. It's like playing a hot and cold game, constantly giving it little nudges and hints that it's on the right track. This helps it learn way faster without changing what the best final solution is.
And that is exactly what the researchers did here. They used this reward shaping to give the AI tiny bonus points every single time its leg movements started to resemble a proper gait, like a trot. It was just enough of a hint to help the AI discover these classic, efficient ways of walking all on its own. And this is where you can see just how massive this experiment was. They didn't just train one AI brain. They trained 15 completely different versions of it.
They took 5 different walking styles and trained each one across 3 different virtual environments, just to see which combination would perform the best.
Okay, so now for the moment of truth. All that training, all those millions of attempts inside a perfect computer simulation, does any of it actually work in the messy, chaotic real world?
I mean, this is the million-dollar question in robotics today. The team took all 15 of those policies they trained, and with absolutely zero extra practice in the real world, this is called a zero-shot transfer. They just uploaded them onto the physical robot, put it on the real shaky bridge, and let it go.
And the results? They were night and day. The brains that only ever trained on a flat, stable bridge, they totally struggled on the real shaky one. But the ones that had practiced on that shaky digital twin, they were way more stable, way more robust. It's definitive proof that training in a more realistic, more challenging simulation leads directly to a robot that performs better in the real world.
But a steady walk is only half the battle. A robot can't navigate a world it can't see. And this brings us to another huge hurdle in bridging that gap between simulation and reality: perception. You see, if you only have one sensor, say on the robot's body, it creates this massive blind spot right in front of its feet, which is exactly where it needs to see to take its next step. It's literally walking blind into the most critical area.
So what's the solution? Well, as this research shows, it's pretty intuitive. You just give the robot more eyes. By putting one camera facing forward to see things far away, and a second one angled down to see what's right in front of its feet, you can merge the data from both. This creates a much more complete, detailed map of the world around it, getting rid of those dangerous blind spots.
Okay, so let's zoom out. We've seen how robots can learn to walk on shaky ground, and we've seen how they can get a better view of the path ahead. What does all this add up to for the big picture? And this is where all that hard work really pays off. This stuff isn't just a cool academic exercise. Having robots with robust walking and seeing abilities is absolutely critical for things like search and rescue, where they need to get through collapsed buildings. It's also essential for industrial jobs, letting robots like this animal safely inspect dangerous places like oil rigs or power plants, keeping humans out of harm's way.
Which really brings us to a fascinating final thought. We started this whole journey by copying animals, right? By mimicking nature. But as we keep developing these incredibly powerful learning techniques, these better sensors, allowing robots to adapt in ways that biology just can't, well, you have to wonder, are we getting to a future where our creations might actually move with more grace and skill than the animals that inspired them in the first place? It's a wild thought.